Good evening and welcome back to Celtic World Order podcast. As always, I'm Steve O'Matt, and as you can see, it's my absolute pleasure to be joined by two of the good guys of Celtic podcasting, two old friends that actually makes this feel like a bigger and better reunion. Forget Oasis, get that in the bin. This is what we're talking about. Two of these guys, it's been a long time since I've been on screen with these two guys in the same screen talking about Celtic. I can't wait. Punk Duck Warlord, Liam Greenlaw, the man who is the wise man of Celtic podcasting, and a very bronzed Adonis, Terry Robb, Mr. Post-match viewpoint down there at the bottom. Guys, it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining us on a random and wet Monday night to talk about a game. I know the topic's garbage. I know it's a wee bit hard. Strap yourselves in. There's going to be some harsh viewpoints, I'm sure. But how are you feeling, Liam? First and foremost, yourself.
God, I walked around last couple of days, no in shock, because I talked about it on Friday. Sort of had myself let in that we weren't going to win this game, but it's just still annoying and good anyway. So good to have the multi-pass to do and jumping on this plus for a winner.
Love it. That's it. Yeah, it's a bit of a transfer into it. You got the bus down to here. You've got on a platform, Celtic World Order, and ready to roll. Terry, likewise, I'm expecting some good talk out of yourself. I love the cut of your jib. You know that, brother. There's a lot of respect here. Mate, are you still fizzing? Have you recovered for the weekend?
First of all, Steve, will just say you've built up a good pod here. I watch it from a distance. You've just ruined it all by bringing me on. Obviously, that's all downhill from here. You know what? I was fizzing. I was fizzing obviously until I seen some of the stuff that's going on down south this evening, and then it just completely puts it all into perspective, and you're thinking, "Fucking hell!" Like it's only football, but we have to try and just put that to one side and let the people that are dealing with that, the police and everything deal with it. But I'll be honest, I did the post-match with Bhoys and I watched the game, but I went out. I was hemming and hawing. Whenever I was a kid, we used to drive an hour from where I lived to Carnock, which is where BrendanRodgers was from. It took us an hour to get there. But the only place you could go to see a Scottish Cup final was somewhere that had Scottish TV, and because that was one of the closest points across the water, they got BBC Scotland. So we used to go down for the cup finals, and you jumped in a bus or a van or a car or whatever, and me and my brother sort of, for old time's sake, we sort of maybe thought we'd go down there for the day, but it was just too hard to get to. It's in the arsehole of nowhere. Honestly, I don't know how BrendanRodgers ended up going from there to being a football manager, because we checked there's no trains, there's no train station, checked the buses, there's one bus in on a Saturday, no buses out, and I couldn't find anybody that would drive us.
Is there a BrendanRodgers statue down there?
Honestly, it's in the arsehole of nowhere. But listen, it was whenever it was the only place that you could go to watch games, it felt like the best place ever, and some great stories and things from days where we've gone down, and you've had some. There was one where we went down to watch a game, and there'd been a bit of trouble during the day or just earlier, and the bars all closed up because there'd been trouble, and we were just going back to the van with glum faces because we weren't going to see the game. And some lady just came out of her house and just said, "What's going on, lads?" And we said, "Look, we can't see the game. The bar's closed." And she brought us in, put us in her living room, and we watched Celtic beat Rangers 2-0 with
love it.
Darius Dovcik scoring.
You're taking us back there with that, mate. Take us back.
Yeah. And but my earliest memory is the McAvenny final, the final against Dundee United, when Kevin Gallagher gave Dundee United the lead, and then Mac had done the business in the last couple of minutes. So anyway, that didn't happen, and I just had a few pints before the game. Then I watched it in the house with my brother, packed him home, absolutely pissed at full time. Went on with Bhoys, can't even remember being on. Talked a load of pish, probably abused people and offended people, and I apologise if I did. Don't really remember much about the match. I've no interest in watching it back again. I know the key points. I know.
Well, do you know
what's happened?
it's good to know, because we're not going to visit. We're not going to break it down minute by minute. We're really here. Let's call it, is it something of a post-mortem? Because as you can see there, as it says, the hut from Hampden, in my opinion at least, and we'll get your thoughts on it, it highlights the requirement, the need for improvement, the work that's needing done behind the scenes. And of course, that is what we're here to talk about. The squad, get your thoughts in the comments. We'll try and get up as many views as we can, get you involved. What do you think we need? What went wrong? What was the cause of it? Is there players needing moved on? Is there what do we need in terms of reinforcements? Did the manager get it wrong? Is there improvements for him to make? Get it all in there and we'll try to bring it up. As we say, before we do, we kick off, as always, the wee bit of housekeeping. We say welcome back to the channel. If you're a returning subscriber, then thank you very much. We appreciate it. If you're new, hit the subscribe. It costs you absolutely nothing. You'll get notified. Hit the bell icon every time one of these videos pop up. There you go. Bang. You'll know that we're on. We're on XW Pod 1888. Blue Sky, TikTok, Spotify, you know the score by now. And if you want to help out the channel, you can. And there's from the Helmet channel, the original member, 420 somewhere, and he's donated. He's has any memberships, and he is a member for 11 months. We appreciate that. If you want to get on board with that, it just helps put all this together. $1.99 donation. Lovely stuff. And there's plenty he's in. But, yep, let's get in about the thick of it. But, Terry, you said something when we came on, and I just want to echo that. Football has to take a wee bit of a back seat when it comes to, people in life, and in the midst of a celebration of a Liverpool title victory, we've seen some horrendous scenes down there, and that's the last thing we want to see. Liverpool in particular, they're a fan base, they're a city that have been, scared by tragedy, and unfortunately this is a developing situation down there. So our best wishes to absolutely everybody that's involved in that and affected by that, and hopefully it is not a large-scale tragedy, and whoever it is that's responsible gets rightly dealt with. Bit of a sombre moment there.
At this stage as well, I know if you look at some of the statements that come out from the Prime Minister and the statement from the police, it probably doesn't point towards this, but suppose at this stage we're only speculating, we don't know what's happened. It could be a medical incident. And I remember there was one in Glasgow city centre with the bus driver. It doesn't feel as if that's the case. The language that's being used about an arrest and the language from the PM suggests that that's not the case. But I suppose at this stage, there's no point in us talking any further about it because it's only speculation, and the police have asked for no speculation whilst they try and
definitely we'll see that as it pans out. So one thing that we can not necessarily speculate, we can talk with fact, is that game and the fallout. Liam, where do we start? I'll throw it out there in general terms for yourself. Where did it go wrong? Because we went into that game riding the crest of a wave. Results against Aberdeen, we'd been scudding them the past 4, 17 goals against them, three against ourselves. It was all written there. The last game of the season, touching distance, you could literally reach out and grab it. You would like to think of all the games, I know trebles aren't easy, but that final game, the one game, the last hurdle, so their last game, if you can't get up for that, if you can't deliver, then it's a sad day, and it was a sad day. Yourself, brother, where did it go wrong? Talk to me.
I've always been a big fan of momentum in anything you do. If you don't have to stop it, don't stop it, because then you have to restart it again, and it's sluggish and it turns, and you might not get back up to that same speed the same way. I look at Celtic like that, and the other day proved it. You just can't turn it back on and off when you decide it to. When you decide, we look like we took the foot off the pedal because I think players got very, very complacent, and our manager got complacent, and our manager as well assumed that guys like Kroenwell, given a big game and a big occasion, that these guys would take the opportunity and turn it on, and what we see is that didn't happen. We have just a mindset within our culture and within our team that we're very reluctant to change. This is a team of, boardroom full of accountants, and now we're seeing a management team full of accountants as well, where everything that we do is very, very, very low risk. You know, you want numbers? We had 1,055 passes that game. 1,055.
And can I jump in that? It didn't feel like it. It felt laboured and side to side.
Still passes though. 1,000, and they had 280 something, nearly 300. You know, and you look at, okay, well, that seems to be just where we're going with a team. The amount of passes that went back, the amount of times Callum McGregor, plenty of room to turn, but that pass went straight back, and it looks like it's conditioning. It looks like it's overcoaching. It looks like, honestly, it looks like we need to unplug for the matrix. That's what I feel like we're in with Rodgers, where it's you get into the system and the creativity is pulled out the game to sort of like hit this sort of like large numerical advantage, you know, obsession-based possession game that doesn't seem to work. It doesn't work because all the Scottish teams now, we've had about 5 managers now that have figured out how to play against this team and how to play against that block. And then you're looking for the one thing that we don't seem to promote or respect, and that's creativity. We're looking for it to come out of nothing, or a guy like Johnny Kenny or Greg Taylor in the midfield role. You know, yeah, we need to unplug for the matrix. That's what I'm saying right now. And we're in the matrix.
Yeah, I mean, you make a few points there, right? And obviously, this is the thing, Terry. You'll be criticised, right? You will be criticised. If we start this season, I say to you, here's what's going to happen. You're going to win a double, and that'll be your lot. Of course, you're taking it, right? Now, we hear the term entitled and so on and so forth, and you know, you don't know you're alive. You take these things for granted. We've heard all that thrown out there. The question I walked away with to myself after that game, I done a wee video, go and check that out, but live, I've done a few things there, and you'll get my instant reaction if you want that there. It's on the channel. But I walked away from it, and I know it's easy to be philosophical after the event. I know it's easy to hindsight and all that stuff, Terry, but I felt where if we won a treble, we would have lapped it up. And all that matters is the history books and the pictures and what you see. It doesn't matter how you get there. I do get that, right? But I have to also take a step back. And for me, this literally was a season of 2 halves. The first half, up until December, I thought we were absolutely blitzing everybody that moved. We looked fantastic. We then goes into that League Cup final against Rangers. And for me, that was the start of things starting to level out and get a bit sort of wishy-washy. We got through the final. I know that sort of matters, but if we're being honest with ourselves, even then, not a great performance. And that carried on to other games against Rangers. We scraped through that one on penalties, got away with it because they should have had a penalty in extra time. But on reflection, I just feel that a treble would have covered over a multitude of sins. It would have just been, look at us as we see the stage, the lights, everything that was there. And I don't feel that's arrogant because you've got to play the numbers game. You expected to win it. And if you didn't have that there, it would have been pandemonium at the stadium. So it's there. And you look at a full taking it down, but you got to do it. But Terry, do you have any of that sense? I know I heard you what you saying. You went, trebles are hard to win, and you gave kudos to Aberdeen, and they set up perfectly. But do you get the feeling, is this season as good as it been? Is that being entitled to say that, mate?
I'm glad to see you've been watching me anyway, Steve. I think the point I was trying to make was if Aberdeen had won the League Cup, see that blistering start they made to the season, if they'd beat us in the semi where we beat them 6-0 and they'd gone on to win the League Cup, we would probably have stepped back and go, do you know what? Aberdeen actually deserved to win that trophy because of the start they've made.
Yes.
And there's so many different strands this conversation could take. We'll not focus on Aberdeen. I give Jimmy Teelan credit. Let's look at mistakes that were made on the day, because there's two main bits that I want to focus on: mistakes that were made on the day and mistakes that were made round about that period that you have referenced. And let's look on the day. Was there any real reason why, and I will pick on individuals, was there any real reason why James Forrest didn't start that game on either side? I'm not going to say ahead of Kuhn. I'm not going to say ahead of Ida, but definitely ahead of one of them, based on what we'd seen in the weeks leading up to it. Now, in our RFNE, the way the game played out, there was no intensity. We were passive. We were pedestrian. We've seen this movie before. I don't think any of us or anyone that's watching will be shocked by that performance, because our own manager used that same terminology about 6-8 weeks ago in a performance where he goes, well, I'm not shocked because I've seen it enough times. We've seen this movie multiple times this season where we just don't turn up. We just don't put enough into it. There's no urgency and nothing happens. We keep the ball, but we don't actually do anything. We don't create anything. Nothing happens. Then in our moment in need, when we're on for a treble in the cup final, we've got Greg Taylor playing centre midfield. We've got a lone player playing left back. And we've got Johnny Kenny up front, who's got 1 goal to his name for Celtic. Yeah. So that's mistakes on the day. But then you take that back a step further. Why are we in that position where we're in that scenario? And we're in that scenario because the work that we did last summer, whilst at the time we felt, because of the outlay, the financial outlay, we felt things are moving in a better direction. However, it looks as though the direction that we put those funds has been slightly misplaced. Then, for me, the key moment in the whole thing is we allow our top scorer, our talisman, our key man over the last 3 years, 4 years, 3.5, whatever. We allow him to go in January. And despite the manager begging, absolutely outweighs begging ball for a replacement, we don't get it. That's why we end up with Johnny Kenny with 1 goal. This isn't Johnny Kenny's fault. I actually think Johnny Kenny might be quite good, but
I'm with you in that as well.
We'll probably never see it, but that's why we're going for a treble, and we're relying on Guy with 1 goal to his name for Celtic, and he got it in the last 10 days or so, and that all comes about in January, and that all comes about because of a board that always feel as if we don't need to do any more. And every time this board, and I was going to say they're very good at this, they're very bad at it. If you think back to the AGMs, they come out and they try to be smart and they make jokes about other clubs, and they're really obnoxious and arrogant, and it comes back to bite them. And I genuinely think the manager's begging for a Kyogo replacement, and they're just too arrogant. They're just going, nah, do you know what? League's done. We won't be able to go any further in Europe. That was their words, by their actions. And we'll probably go on and win the cup anyway. And the last game that I genuinely think I'm watching Celtic and going, that's a really, really good performance, was the Bayern Munich game. And I know Kyogo had gone at that stage, but I feel as if the board pulled the season. They pulled the curtains on this season whenever they allowed Kyogo to go and didn't replace him. It was kind of like, right, there's no need for us to do anything else here. We'll bring in Schlupp as a stopgap at left back, because Alex Bay moved on, and we've just seen that he's just signed for Como for 6 million quid, and will probably come out to be the best of the midfielders who are in this, or sorry, not the midfielders, the left backs that are in this conversation. He'll probably turn out to be the best, but they just pulled the curtain on the season. Then they just said, right, league's done, League Cup's in the bag, fortuitously or not. Alex Bay, we'll just replace him with somebody on loan from the EPL. We'll do that. Kyogo's gone. Yeah, I know, Brendan. I know you're begging for one, and I know you've publicly asked for it. But we'll dip our toe in here. If we can get a bargain, we'll take one. But if we can get Danny Ings at 11:59 on deadline day, we'll take it. But you ain't getting what you want. We don't need it. The job's done, and it's kind of like they've closed the curtain on the performance at that stage. And if you're in any sort of industry or business or workplace, when the guys at the top start to take their foot off the pedal, everybody else sees that, and it just works its way down through. And it doesn't matter if there's 60,000 fans turning up. You're an employee of a club, and if you get a feeling that you can have an easy day or an easy week because other people above you are they've taken their foot off the gas, that just makes its whole way down through the club. And I think the Celtic board They created this. They created this monster where we some players within the squad.
Terry, see me look at it though. See to talk about January, and I get it. I agree. We should have absolutely got another striker in, whether it was loan or otherwise. Right? There's no bones about that. And I'm just throwing this out here, and I'll come to yourself with this as well, Liam. This is no disrespect to these players. This is just an observation. Now, a lot of folk were saying BrendanRodgers wasn't backed. Maybe not in terms of the sheer numbers. And again, the financials that we put out were quite high, but I know that when you think of the money that we brought in, when you think of the players that we sold, that the balance at the end of it wasn't that much, right? But see, when we look at the progression of some of the signings that were made up until that point, did you see enough in them where if you're the board, you're sitting and going, right, I'm just going to hit you with another 50 to 20 million because you've done so well with these first signings? Is that played into it? Is that something that's maybe for yourself? You know, I'll let you think over that one, but I'll jump up to yourself with that one, Liam. You know, we needed reinforcements, but I've started to see people doubting the transfer eye of BrendanRodgers. I mean, we've got a team here that is still largely an Ange side and a couple of guys that were actually there the first time it was around.
I think that's how much do we want to make Rodgers respond, have him take responsibility for some of this. If you look at his position, and especially him also being a fan, apparently as well, and, and having the fans' interests at heart, and, him going up and saying something and challenging the board, he's never been in a better position to do it because I think he would have the full backing of the entire support if he was the one to come out and actually challenge him and say, listen, this isn't good enough. You sold my striker here. But he just comes out, yeah, I'm disappointed and I was hoping we'd get one in, and but it doesn't seem to move anything or create any change. And yet I'm thinking, wow, he's in a very strong position here to do that, from what happened the first time round. And it just, it surprises me that he comes across a lot more passive than I originally thought he would be. As far as giving him extra money to go and buy players, I'm not convinced he knows a good player. I'm really not. Now,
Nat Phillips.
I thought as well when I saw the 3 signings that came in, like the 3 major ones, right, in the summer, Engels, everything about Engels on paper is exactly the signing we need to be making. The problem is, I don't think he's the right guy. Everything about that, all the calculations, all that add up. But there's something missing with Engels that I think, the reason why I'd never, ever even heard of the boy before. I watched a wee bit of German football, but usually there's something in the paper. You see something. I get a lot of football feeds and that, nothing. And so, but yeah, it sounded like the right idea, the same way like a Matt O'Reilly and all that sounded like the right idea. I just don't know if we're identifying the right players. The trusty thing, I could have told you from the start. See, Ida as well. I think there's a culture of winners that you have to look for to play for a team like Celtic, where you're expected to win all the time and you're expected to have a lot of the ball all the time, and you have to have constant pressure. And I don't know if our scouting department is looking at these boys and seeing if they have that strong mental toughness to play for a team like Celtic.
Yeah.
I don't think Ida does. I don't think Trusty does. And I think we're seeing Kuhn, definitely not. Just so you've seen patterns there right now. It's like, okay, well, wait a minute. Are we not looking for those qualities anymore? I remember when Ange was back in charge, and one of the stories, talking about meeting the player and getting down and discussing, looking at the character and figuring out the character to play with Celtic. All right, are we not doing that anymore? Because the 3 signings we have in the summer, they don't have that. I don't know. There's no mental toughness or a drive there that makes me think they're playing for the jersey.
I mean, yourself, where are you at with this, Terry, as a season? This is just it's broadly speaking, it's not a lynching by any stretch of imagine. It's not going to be knee-jerk, but I think it needs to be brought up. And as Liam's saying there, yeah, when we look at it on paper, this is the thing, when we look at it on paper, stats are fantastic. And yeah, if I say to you, Ida, striker, let's say it was 3 million, 4 million, I tell you, he's going to score 20 goals, you'd be all over that, right? If I told you Engels was going to have the amount of assists and the amount of goals that he had in his first season, again, at a different value, but absolutely. But as you say, when you talk about games before, there's something to be said for the eye test, right? And I think Saturday was a key example of that. These guys, Trusty, nowhere near it, not even making the pitch, not even near it in terms of getting into that team. You've got Engels, who is, the whole midfield was just flat in my opinion, but Engels just not doing enough, not being that creative spark, just going about his business and doing the basics. Ida might as well have not been on the pitch, right? And when we wind the clock back to BrendanRodgers' first term, he was good at changing players that were already there, but his actual hit rate of players that he signed wasn't great. And for me, my takeaway was, I am worried. We've got the money, we've got this and that. Aside from the will they spend it, won't they spend it, will we get the right players in? I'm seeing echoes of BrendanRodgers' first season, first term. Yes, you'll point to trebles. Yes, you'll talk to success. But remember, first season, blitzing everybody that moved. Fantastic. Second season, drop-off in quality. Now, I know you can't slaughter teams all the time, but a notable drop-off. You speak to anybody, season 2 started to get stale, started to get samey. Teams starting to work out, make it harder. Season 3, before he left, a further drop-off. And it took Neil N to come in, change everything up, pick that team up and get it over the line. Are we very quickly getting into this regression that we saw the first time round?
I sincerely hope not, because season 1 wasn't good enough, and season 2, I know we're sitting on a double, but how many times were you actually entertained? If there was a serious challenge this season, would we have been able to repel that? I mean, last season was in the balance for a long way, and on Bhoys' show, I sat one night and I just said, I want him gone. I want him gone. I think it was a game against Hearts. We lost 2-0 at home, and I'm just gone. He's just standing there with his hands in his pockets, chewing chewing gum. He hasn't Scooby-Doo. What do you do here? And I rudely interrupted Liam there and fired the words Nat Phillips across the like, you know, people often debate, oh, he's not a Rodgers sign, he's not a Rodgers sign, he's not a Rodgers sign. Well, you can absolutely bet your bottom dollar Nat Phillips was a Rodgers signing, and look at the state of him. Do you know what I'm saying? And if I look at those 3 from last summer, and I love my centre backs, absolutely love my centre backs. I'm obsessed with centre backs. That was where I played, and I go back to Roy Aitken vaguely, but Paul Elliott was my absolute favourite, even above Van Dijk or Carter Vickers. Paul Elliott, I absolutely loved him. He was just a Rolls Royce, dominant in the air, dominant in the tackle, scored goals, everything, absolutely everything. But we went out and shelled out $6 million for a centre back who I hoped, but didn't expect to be the one that goes in there at the same level as Carter Vickers on the other side. Now, Liam will know this from being on the bus. I was Starfelt's biggest critic. Mm-hmm. I just didn't think Starfelt was good enough for Celtic, but I still don't think he was good enough. He wasn't what I wanted, but my goodness, he was a level above what we've been exposed to since. Now, I'm Scales' biggest fan, but that's just because it's the Irish fella living the dream kind of thing. And I love Scales, but do I want Scales to be our first choice centre back? Nah, I don't. But again, that's what we're being subjected to here. We've gone out, we've spent $6 million on somebody who just isn't up to the job. As manager has on at least 2 occasions described him as either weak or soft. That's not what you want. That's not what you want from your centre backs. Ida, you said there if we paid 3 or 4 mil for him and he scored 20 goals, we'd be happy enough. See, if we paid $1 million for him and I watched him play, I'd be looking $1 million back. Honestly, he impressed me during his loan spell. Towards the end, it's those kind of key goals. The cup final goal, the 2 against Hibs. Although I think they were both penalties, or one of them certainly was. Whenever I heard us linked with him, I honestly thought, is that really our level? Mm-hmm. This was a guy, don't get me wrong, if he was Norwich's first choice striker in the Championship, I would have thought, yeah, do you know what? Probably decent. I'm thinking Gary Hooper levels here, Scunthorpe down towards the bottom, but their first choice striker's the real deal. This guy couldn't get a game for Norwich, and I was just felt with so much dread. It was kind of like this window, are we going to replace Kyogo? And there's names getting thrown about. Like, Danny Ings, and it's so underwhelming. And I was just so underwhelmed by Adamida, and I'm just going, right, at least it's only a 6-month loan. It'll not be made permanent. But was I surprised with, I think I wanted to be. I wanted to be impressed by him. And yes, he scored a couple of important goals. But what I've seen this season is what I thought I would see when I heard his name linked with us. And honestly, if we paid $1 million for him, it'd be $1 million too much. He's not up to the level. I don't see a scenario where at any stage in the future he makes me think that we should have signed him. I think the same with Trusty as well. I don't think there'll come a day where I go, yeah, I'm behind that. Engels, I think I've seen enough that if he's here next season, we'll see a better player. Yes. I also think that if he was to leave us this summer, we'll make a profit on him. And I think I've just seen enough. You talked about he does the simple things. I think he does the simple things really, really well. I know the numbers are distorted a wee bit by
Terry, just to jump in whilst you're on that train of thought. I asked Liam the other time he was on with us the other day there. I says, Engels, if you were to get offered double your money, or let's just say 8-9 million above what you paid for him, do you see Engels next season? And I fully believe that with a full pre-season, he'll improve. He'll look like a far better player. But my question is, do you see him as having that burst out season where he's 2-3 times better than he is right now, where you're like, absolutely cannot drop this guy? He is the best thing since sliced bread. He needs to be in my team now, because personally, and I'm happy to be wrong, and I hope I'm proven wrong if he stays about, I just don't see it. So my point being is, come the end of next season, if a team come asking, is his value going to be that much more than maybe what you're getting offered now?
I think it'll be interesting this summer, Steve, because I do think we'll get offers for him. I think we can see that already. The season's barely ended, and there's rumours linking him with various teams. I just think you're going back to that data conversation. Loads of clubs, his name will appear as a viable option at the top of a lot of lists. The thing that gives me a little bit of confidence is just the Matt O'Reilly. The Matt O'Reilly progression from season 1 to season 2 was astonishing, because and just get rid of the fees a wee bit. O'Reilly comes in 1.5 mil, and again, you're not expecting much. And season 1 from I think he joined in the January window, or I could be wrong on that. I think he joined in the January window, but his progression in his second season was just so stark to the first season, and then he goes and leaves for 25 mil. He's had a bit of an in and out season with Brighton, but again, there's actually chat that he could be moved on quite quickly, because there's teams going to come in and offer more again for him based on very, very little game time for Brighton. So I wouldn't rule out with Engels. I think I've seen enough. I've seen enough quality moments from Engels where I've thought, yeah, do you know what? You're not the finished article, and he's never going to be the finished article, because we're not going to get the finished article at a player age 21. We're not going to get one who's already mature and already shown the levels. We're still buying potential, and we're waiting and hoping for that to potential to mature. So I think Engels is still with Celtic next season. I would be confident enough to take a punt that he will have a better season than he has this season. I think if we sold him this summer, we get more than we paid for him. I think if we sell him next summer, we'll also get more. But I also have a wee niggling feeling that if we get offered anything near money back, there's a chance we could win this summer.
Yeah. So, Liam, so getting back to sort of what we learned, or maybe didn't learn something, maybe we already knew it for the game at the weekend there, as we say. So having a look at it, right, we can sit, and a lot of folk are mixed on this. Terry the other day, he gave them credit. I came on here and I predicted, I says they're going to be compact, they're going to be sticky, they're going to try and make it hard. I predicted either 5 at the back or 5 in the middle, and that's exactly what we got. We get 5 at the back, we get 3 in the midfield with 2 up front. But as we saw, they just kept banking in. The midfield 3 were dropping in and essentially giving you 8. Now, when we look at players and we talk about the effectiveness, we've mentioned Engels. As I says, I felt that he went about the park relatively tidy. The problem is maybe he needs better players about him, as people are saying there. Cal McGregor, for me, let himself down as well. I think that he should have stepped up. The midfield was too samey for me. You had him, you had Bernardo's, and you had Engels. Now, I've criticised Hatate time and time again for this, but what I felt we really needed was that maverick madness. We needed that guy that was going to drop his shoulder, charge, and try and break things down. When that wasn't working, Cal McGregor, for me, probably should have done the captain-like thing instead of, playing by the manager's rule book, because I always feel like he's just quite safe at times. He should have been moving to Bernardo and saying, you drop deep, you be the holder, I'm the guy who's going to get through. Because Engels, for the great range of passing he's got, for everything that he has, he doesn't have that energy, that zip. And for me, that's what happened. But we're talking about the guys stepping up, making a difference. Now, folk are saying, Big Rab's saying about Ida, he was swamped around with 5 guys, and it limited his move. So you can't, within reason, blame that. But I don't feel he get involved in the game enough to join up the dots. And likewise with Kuhn, he's another guy that's been, I just want to highlight right now, he just doesn't look interested. I mean, it was up there with one of the poorest performances ever. And again, this is a name of a guy that might get sold. Similar to there, I'm highlighting Kuhn, I'm highlighting Engels, I'm highlighting Ida. For me, just guys that, yes, I understand that the compactness and the space was getting squeezed by Aberdeen, but they weren't coming around looking enough to get involved in the play. Where are you at with Kuhn and the improvements that we need there? Because he might as well have not been on the pitch, mate.
Yeah, Kuhn's something. I thought he was fantastic at the beginning of the years, did everybody else, but it just seems to be an arrogance, just like a distance with him that he doesn't look like he's connected with the game or the players around him with that. You never see him animated or, the gesturing for where he wants the ball or, or any sort of drive whatsoever. And yeah, I don't know. It's just one of the, again, it comes down to mindset and temperament. Who's scouting these players that we're not looking at that part of them? How can you not get up for a cup final? And if he is, then I think what we're seeing is a player that's probably just got like a couple of tricks, and a lot of people have started to figure those tricks out. Where that he scored a lot of goals running across the middle of the park, the way Forrest used to, and letting the ball go for the centre circle. He's done very well with that. But now everybody's just tracking him. They just keep letting him go and go and go until he runs into a problem where I think it was Bernardo he tried to shift it to. I thought the only spark we had was when we made that initial substitution and Maeda went back into the middle. Mm-hmm. We had 2 or 3 chances, including that breakaway. And by the way, I've seen footage of that breakaway since as well, and you can see him getting tapped from behind the back of his leg before he's trying to get that shot away. That's why he stumbles a wee bit. Mm-hmm. But honestly, I think if we had Maeda up the middle instead of Ada, I think we would have had that spark. And Maeda just looks lost out in the wing. He's went out there and and he gets punted out the second time, and then the second time he went in there, that was him. He was back in Japan at that point, because it's just like, here he is. He's the best striker in the club, and he's getting pushed back in the winging this time for Johnny Kenny. This is a guy who wants to get a game with the Japanese national team and is one of their strikers. And yet Rodgers still thinks that we can mould Ida into a better version of Maeda. You've got to play your best players in the best positions.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to bring up, obviously, we're trying to get as many comments up here, and I see, in fairness, Rab everybody's entitled to their opinions, and that's the thing here. Bring them in. We're all happy to all views here. I think you may be missing the point here, Rab. I appreciate your input, mate. As he says, we are entitled as fans to sit here. That's what these forums are like. That's what these podcasts and all that are about, is to chew the fat over it. Do I agree that if you're a manager having a go at players doesn't work? Well, no, I think that's a sort of tactic that can run dry, as we've seen last season when Rodgers tried that. He eroded a wee bit of faith. But we're fans. That's our prerogative to sit here and talk about it. And as I says, he has had very little game time. And as I says to Terry, yes, 20 goals, you would take that. But that doesn't mean that you can sit there and just say, we scored 20 goals. Brilliant. Good man. And likewise with Engels, yes, his stats are better than Hatate's, but we're talking about an isolation of a game and a performance where he done the simple things tidy. I know he's a different type of player, but he didn't step up. And again, I hate labouring fees because we should be paying these kind of money. But when you put 11 million out on a midfielder, you want that wee spark of magic. You want them to just have that coming of age moment or that bravery to just take the game by the throat and try to do something. And Engels, Bernardo, and our captain, none of the midfield done that for me. So that's why we're talking. That's why we're maybe giving folk a hard time. That's maybe why we're giving them a verbal kicking.
We're not giving them a hard time, Steve. We're just giving our views on the game and what we feel over the course of the season. And on Big Rabs, the guy that he's mentioned there, Hatate's had the most criticism, I would think, of any Celtic player this season. But on Saturday, if you asked anybody what was missing from our performance, everybody's going Hatate, the guy that takes the risks, the guy who creates. But most of the season, everybody's been going, yeah, Hatate's been giving the ball away. Do you know what I mean? We're just having a conversation. We're just chewing the fat. We're just three guys in the pub having a pint and chatting about the football. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But to bring it back to the games, I says the learning points that I'm taking away from here, right? For me, I want to come back, Terry, to this idea of trebles are hard, right? Now, again, this hasn't been entitled. See, if you ask me, I had this chat and I fully agree. Don't take them for granted. They are special. You have to work hard. You really, really need to do it. But I'm fully with you where, see, for me, personally speaking, the hardest one or hardest ones should be 1 and 2. The first one, when it's the start of the season, everybody's fresh. Teams don't have injuries. There's no tired legs. And as we saw with a team like Aberdeen, they can put you to the sword. They can surprise you. That's that. But once you get that first one in there, you've obviously then got the marathon that is the league. Now, we've proven that over the piece, we are the best team because we won enough games. We didn't lose as many and we got to where we need to be, right? Did we do it in blistering fashion? No, we didn't. I felt that when you look at it, a particular forum since February, it was very up and down, pretty poor, quite lacklustre, a lack of creativity. I've been on this pod, I've been commenting on other pods where I felt the manager adapted in Europe. He changed things because he knew he needed to do it. But in the league, we stick to the same formula. We'll turn up, we'll do our game, we'll deal with it and it'll work. We don't adapt for the league when we need to do it because teams are starting to find us out. But my point is, you get that second one over the line. Now, the third one, I understand. You could also say the toss that it's the last game of the season. Players are tired. Players are thinking about their holiday, whatever. I'm sorry. For me, the Scottish Cup final, the last game of the season, that should be the easiest one of them all. That's the one that you should be able to get yourself right up for and go out and do it. Too many of these guys, I've got a list. Kuhn, Taylor, Scales, Alistair Johnson, Engels, Yang. You know, where were all these guys, Liam? Where were these guys during this game? And that's the thing. It's easy to play the blame game, but we're talking about what we saw with our eyes. You would have been forgiven if you thought, is this mid-season? Because it didn't look like it was a team pushing for a treble.
Well, it seemed there was a lot of guys that just came back for injury as well that walked back to the team, regardless of the form of the people they replaced. Yeah, it was complacency. I think when you come back into the team, I don't think, like, supposedly Johnson was getting injections, CCV got an injection, you know, Schmeichel came back for an injury. You know, if you look at just the form of the goalkeepers alone, on form, Sinisalo did nothing wrong. In fact, why take a chance? You know, if you know your goalkeeper's got a bad arm, I mean, that's a pretty significant injury for a goalkeeper, right? You want to make sure that he's mobile and that, you know, that shoulder's not prohibiting him. Yeah, so, you know, even seeing the way Aberdeen attacked him as well on the penalties, they all went for that one side. They didn't go to the other side and they went high. They knew we had a keeper that was injured. Johnson, I think, has been playing with a real injury. He's been dropped for the Canadian national team for the next tournament because I think that's it as well. He needs to recover, whatever, for that hip. But, you know, he's had an injured season, but I think that contributes to the fact that I think he's had a very poor season, considering what an amazing off-season he had this year playing for Canada in the Gold Cup, where he made, you know, one of the players at the tournament. And then when he came back to Celtic, wow, it dropped off. I mean, I really noticed at that Rangers game, you know, before they were off on the international break, Johnson, I saw him 12 hours later on Canadian television, back there all chipper and what he needed to do for Canada and all that and get there and how excited he was because they were playing the USA in a big qualifying game for something. And I think his mind was definitely on that game when I see him as a player. And like he's injured, so why are we rushing these guys back? I thought when we looked at Tony Ralston against Aberdeen, that second team, supposedly that we put up, they had more than enough. They had more than enough to put Aberdeen away.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with you. Look at the team who played shadow team. I know it was shadow team for Aberdeen, but yeah, I just didn't see that. Well, I say I didn't see it coming. I said in my post-match, we've sort of in the moment video where I felt perhaps a result like that was in the post game because we've seen that.
Yeah,
I just didn't expect it to be in a cup final, mate.
No, but cup finals, Rangers games, it looks like we've had a problem getting this team up, since we played Bayern Munich away. It seems to be like the momentum has dropped off. And I think you have to look at the management and the coaching staff. I mean, their coaching staff could probably use a bit of refreshing as well. I like the guys coming in that were recognised players like a Damien Duff and a Harry Kuehl and, people like that in the coaching staff that, you could actually help players develop. I don't think we have that anymore. We've got a doctor, the doctor or whatever, but DOA, this team, mate, doctor's got a lot of work to do this summer.
So Terry, the recurring theme seems to be obviously there's been a drop-off since the exit for the Champions League. And it says, for me, in isolation, when you look at it, be philosophical, whatever, yep, I would bite your hand off for a double. Absolutely. I'm not taking that for granted. But as I say, we always talk about, the manager always talks about, doesn't it, about playing the Celtic way, winning a certain style and doing things like this. And as I say, it's just looking back to the echoes of the first season for me, the first term for Rodgers. As you say, season one of this tenure wasn't fantastic by any stretch, but it was more exciting. You felt that double was quite special in the terms of the way we pulled things back, the way we dug that out and we really rallied on, and it was something to get excited about. This one felt like, we smash it early, then we're dialing it in, and we're starting to see that. We've spoke about players. You spoke about, Liam, the management and the sort of behind-the-scenes things. See with this next season, this summer, Terry, how vital is it for us to get it? And again, I believe in BrendanRodgers, but have you any concerns over, forget the board's ability to give him the tools, but if he gets given the financial tools to do it, to identify the players and to come up with a reinvented version of Brendan football, because it's possession-based heavy stuff. It's the same at Leicester. It's the same at Celtic the first time round. It's the same the second time round. And even that game, everything was predictable about it. The same lineup, the same formation against St Mirren, the same predictable subs at the same predictable time of the game. Does the manager need to change things up as much as the players need to get their finger out their backside?
There's so many different talking points that have happened since the last time you brought me in. I know you were going to bring me in, but was changing the keg there. But a few things. Let me tick them off. Kuhn, he's shown us why he was at clubs like Bayern Munich and Ajax, and he's shown us why he didn't get kept on at clubs like Bayern Munich and Ajax. BrendanRodgers, I've touched on it already. Season 1, the first time, was blistering. Season 2 was a drop-off. And season 2 was a fucking snorefest. So season 3. If season 3 is going to further decline, then we're in for not a very enjoyable time next season, because season 1 this time was nowhere near as blistering as season 1 the last time. Season 2 has been mundane. It needs to go up a notch. We won't know who's behind the transfers. We know certain ones, so I've picked on Nat Phillips. But you can get the flip side. Scott Sinclair, absolutely sensational first season. Mm-hmm. So I would say it's a mix. I'd say it's a mix between the manager identifies some players and the club identify others. And I think we, as a club, we'll probably always have this. We'll probably still be scarred by how he left first time round. So the plan always has to be who's the right signings for the club going forward, as opposed to who's the right signings for this manager for the next 6 months, 12 months. If he doesn't sign a new deal this summer that extends, then what we've seen play out in his season 3 the last time could well play out again, where it's just loan signings, non-committal guys that we don't have to keep on, and then the new manager comes in.
And sorry, Terry, do you think that makes the transfer window difficult for Celtic? If a player is looking at a manager who's not committed to his future, with 1 year left of his contract, knowing what the Rodgers says about I'll be there for a minimum of 3 years, didn't say and I'll extend, just I will be there for a minimum of 3 years, does that play into players maybe looking at us and saying, well, I want to play for BrendanRodgers, but how long am I going to get to play under him?
Well, you've automatically gone there whether the manager wants to be here. There's maybe a question mark whether the club will want BrendanRodgers to stay on beyond 3 years. I don't know. In terms, I feel we should be making signings that are for the benefit of the future of Celtic, regardless who the manager is. And there's a few obvious ones, and there's one obvious one that I've been very, very vocal about for the last 18 months, and that one needs to happen. I think we've missed the boat on it. I think there'll be too many teams interested. I think the success of Scottish football, young Scottish football players in Italy, will probably see us beat to the signing of Lennon Miller. But that one should have been done. 6 months ago, 12 months ago, whenever. We should have been in before anyone else. We would have had first dibs on that one. Usual crack. We've sat back and took a watching brief and allowed things to play out, and a bit like Josh Doig, Aaron Hickey, we've probably missed the boat on it. I really hope we don't, because I think he's an excellent player, and I think he could be the successor long term to Callum McGregor. This is a guy that's captained an SPL team at the age of 17 and shown a maturity way beyond his years and a football ability that makes me believe that he could be, if he wants, a player that comes into Celtic and plays at Celtic for as long as he wants to. I think the club will try and make that happen this summer, but I think they would have had a better chance had they tried to make it happen last summer or the January before. Absolutely. But I don't see them going all the eggs in on players that Rodgers wants. And do you know what? I'm not even convinced that that's a part of the job that he enjoys. I just there's been things that he has said that just makes me think that that's maybe not the side of management that he likes. I think he likes to be out on the pitch and coaching and trying to make players better. I'm not totally convinced that going out and identifying players and, I'm not convinced that that's the part of the game that he enjoys. And you automatically assume that managers will want to bring in their own players, but that's just that. It's just an assumption. There's probably loads of managers out there who are really comfortable, using his own words, on the grass, where you've got the players and they're coaching them and they're working on drills and they're trying to make them better. Maybe it's a part of his makeup that he just doesn't enjoy that other side, where I need to go out here, scout players, and you don't hear of him going to watch players and going to see players and a bit like Lenny was always turning up at places, going to have a look at the. He was the last stage of the sign-off process on players, but you've never really heard that about Rodgers in terms of... Yeah,
it's almost as if we've heard that
he identified the ones that he's worked with before, like the Phillips and the Sinclair and guys like that.
Or as he said before, he gets things put to him and he'll maybe write off on them. And it comes back to what Liam says, maybe we are working on data analysis to identify players. Certainly we know that Tisdale, the Fitba doctor, that's supposedly the way that he's a bit of a forward thinker in that department. I think it needs to bear fruit though, doesn't it? And you says again, Rodgers is better about getting out in the grass and improving players, and we saw that previously in his first term. See, on that with a thought in mind, just one for yourself, Liam, here. Big Rab saying about these players, is there any pass from? And we'll come back into that, because I think that there's certain guys that done well, but see if Rodgers wants to improve a player, Liam, right? He can do it, there's no doubt in my mind. But could part of that improvement be by him adapting and him changing formation, him changing the game plan? Because what I mean is there'll be certain players, as you well know, you can lead a horse to water and all that, right? But there'll be certain players that just won't fit a system. It's just not happening. You can scratch up in their technique, their touch, their match awareness. However, there's just certain guys that will be like trying to fire, you know what I mean, square pegs into round holes. It's not going to work. So does the manager, if he wants to get the best out of what he's got, does he need to play their strengths, much like you said, much like Terry says about Big Ida, play him as a penalty box striker, focus on accentuating what he's good at, instinctive finishing in the box, forget trying to link up the play, forget trying to come back and be a baller. I mean, look at some of the names that are on there. There's room for improvement. Kenny, Yang, I mean, I'll be honest, I thought he was absolutely murder. I wouldn't pass marks for that game, absolutely zero pass marks. If I hadn't seen him with his purple patch, I'd say I'd never want to see him in a Celtic shirt ever again. I think he needs to be developed on loan. Yourself on that one, Liam?
Yeah, I'm trying to think who he's made better. I mean, Maeda, he looks to have picked up a gear, but you wonder how much is in the player himself. Whereas Maeda, to me, looks like, it's like Matt O'Reilly. They're very self-driven players that already obviously have a career path mapped out and are trying to do that. So you don't know how much of that, but yeah, maybe Rodgers has influence on his composure at least this year, which seems to be improved quite a bit. Yeah, I don't know, like the Greg Taylor one's a situation as well, where the inverted fullback, where we don't look to play that with anybody else. Jeffrey Schlupp went in there for a bit, and then he looks just as uncomfortable as Greg Taylor, and I don't see the way we play with an inverted fullback is how that benefits, other than just isolating the wingers, clogging up the midfield, because we just use it as a way to have a first-time bumper pass back to whoever passed it to him, and that just gives the defenders more time to settle and get close to the mark, and and again just get compressed and push us back with a slow block. So I don't see him. I haven't seen him do anything to sort of change the game since the days when we brought on Edouard. Is the last time I remember. I think he's very reluctant to change, and the Rodgers that we had earlier, and the Rodgers that's been at Leicester. Terry said it earlier, this 3-year thing. Yeah, he's a 3-year manager with a 2-year plan.
Liam, do you ever see him going back to the Prem in England? I don't see it. I think his time's gone. Do you think he's in just coasting? Is he just coasting towards retirement?
It looks like, to me, we talk about complacency, and Rodgers looks a very complacent man. He enjoys his life in Glasgow. He's like that. It's like maybe he just had a moment where the relegation of Leicester, he had the disappointment with Liverpool, and then again getting sacked a year after that. That maybe it just comes at some point where I'm just going to need to calm down here and just have a wee house in the country, rather than going to London or something like that. And maybe that for him, that's the Scottish Premier League, because he doesn't seem to be embracing it. I wanted to see fire after they sold Kyogo. I wanted to see him spitting venom and demanding answers for the board. How could we do this? Because 100% everybody would have been behind him in that. But he just seemed very passive, and it's
he just wants to
get going,
In terms of talk,
I'd just like to see him snarl on the sideline. I'd like to see him get involved with the fourth official, or remonstrate with the linesman, or just do something that indicates that there's a bit of passion here. Do you remember Martin? Martin was always involved in when the goals were this wee celebration where he jumped up and he went like this. There's just nothing. There's no emotion. There's nothing from him. He just stands there with the hands in pockets, chewing his gum, and when the goal goes in, he goes like this. I've absolutely no doubt that he is invested emotionally, and maybe that's the skill that he's very good at, taking away the fan emotion from the occupational manager, and he was able to do that when he walked away from us. So maybe that is something that he's good at, and maybe I'm criticizing for something that he shouldn't be criticised for. But you would just like to see a little bit of emotion every now and again.
I'd love to see us this summer I'd like to see us bring in, if he hasn't signed his contract, let's bring in a director of football. But no one.
Do you think that changes? Do you think that changes things though? And again, let's say if he's not extended his contract, would BrendanRodgers be a guy? Do you think he would be better suited to having a sounding board, somebody maybe with experience? I'm not saying his name, but I'm saying like, because he's always exhausted, but like a Ralph Rangnick type guy with that level of experience, but maybe that level of background and caliber that he can use as a sounding board? Or do you think it's the BrendanRodgers show or nothing?
Again, I'd like to see us be creative and actually do a search and find an up and coming director of football. You know, I listen to guys like Stilian Petrov when he talks. I think Petrov, when he talks and does his analysis on the game, my God, he's got a brilliant football mind. He's played internationally, that sort of thing. You know, do we need another player coming in that's sort of like identifying the football players and what we need to play systems and all that, so that if Rodgers does go after that third year, we can still actively go and recruit players and that this summer, but knowing that there's some sort of access for them to get into the first team. You know, we buy a lot of players and we stockpile them. We don't have a route to get players through, and that's, you know, reflective on our youth signings as well right now. You know, Kieran Tierney would very unlikely get into a Rodgers team, I think.
Wow. I mean, I tell you what is interesting here, if we touch back on the game, right? See, when we look at some of the subs, I thought, you know, the strength, you could see that the quality and depth wasn't there, right? And again, that's a combination of factors. I partly put that on the manager, as he says, because he went through those wee flipping flopping periods where he was quite, no, I want this. But we sell a striker, we get in a striker, so on and so forth. Then he kind of backed down. You know, he was saying about needing quality, and then it got to the, I'll work with what I've got type of throughout the course of his time here, right? So he's kind of went back, forward. It almost feels like he's toeing the line a wee bit. Yes, he's got some money, but within reason, and he needs to add it in. When I look at the substitutions, a lot of that, again, is just the predictability is so much there. For me, for example, when he makes the change and he brings off Engels, for as much as I was saying, I just thought he wasn't doing too much. By comparison to Bernardo, it was the wrong decision to bring on McCowan for Engels. McCowan would have given you the snap, he would give you a wee bit more of the fight, he would have been a wee bit more direct. If you then dropped him into the pocket and moved Callum McGregor forward, like I said, to fill that Hatate void, as we've seen him do, that would allow Engels to pick the passes, to move things around and try to do it. It's poor that the manager couldn't see that. Forrest comes on. Forrest is brilliant. I liked what I saw for Johnny Kenny, puts himself about. But it's a sad indictment that we're looking at a game, and I love James Forrest, but dependent on James Forrest. See, as soon as James Forrest got injured and went off the pitch, I was like, this isn't happening. Because he was the only one guy. He was doing the things that Kuhn doesn't do. Kuhn's became one-dimensional. Kuhn's became so predictable. He's not a kind of guy, he's a different type of player, but he won't beat two players, he won't beat three players, he won't hit that byline, he won't go direct like Forrest does. That's what we needed. Yang wasn't the answer either, but we end up finishing the game as we did, and we fire Greg Taylor into midfield. Now, that for me, I'm sorry, in 2025 for the Scottish Cup final, that is absolute desperate stuff, and we're talking about we need to improve, and there's actually one here that somebody brought up, and I can't actually believe it, saying, yes, next season or this summer, your first three signs will be Duan, it'll be Schlupp, and it'll be Tierney. Tierney, fantastic, that's a level up. But I actually genuinely can't believe that we're having a discussion about bringing Jeffrey Schlupp back. He came on and he looked all right, he hit the bar, but by God, he fell off the edge of a cliff. And that is just a lack of ambition. Getting rid of the Baniac, bringing in Duan, and, you know, it's not an improvement in any way, shape or form. And bringing Schlupp back, why? Because he's easy and he's there.
I totally agree with it. It just lacks any imagination whatsoever. We just keep going to what's closest to us. You know, it's like we need to have a wider net. Who's identifying players in that right now? I think Schlupp, again, rewarding mediocrity. He started off really well. I thought he was fantastic against Bayern. I thought he was one of our best players, and I thought he was exactly what we needed. And then by the time you go to that Rangers game, didn't look anywhere near it. And then from then on, he showed up and he's done okay and stuff like that. But he doesn't look like a guy that's playing for a contract. So to actually get a contract, like supposedly handed to put that on the table now, it's just like, okay, well, what are we rewarding? Because he's really, really dropped off. So, yeah, they might be out there. I mean, what about this young boy at Hearts right now? Rodgers wants to develop players. It's James Penrice. I mean, there's a Scottish, young, that would be an ideal deputy for Tierney. Somebody that can learn for a guy that's, Scottish left back and who could come up himself into replacing, Taylor will be out, Robertson will be out, and then Tierney will be out eventually. And so that's maybe his ideal replacement there. So there's a really interesting pathway as well if we're looking to bolster. Get Lennon Miller, get James Penrice. The Doohan signing. Well, remember we talk about Aberdeen lost their way after we scudded them 6-0. Who was in goal? It wasn't Mitov. It was Doohan. Right? Mitov got injured and he was out for 3 months when Aberdeen took that slide. And as we've seen on Saturday, he's a very good goalkeeper. Doohan. I think that started their spiral was that 6-0 first defeat that they had to Celtic that just crushed their hope.
I mean, I think it's important to bring up more talking about these things. Obviously, I'll move to yourself there, Liam. Sorry, Terry. His problem, Penrice isn't as young as we think. He's 26, is Big Rab's saying, but almost 27. But I suppose it just comes back to looking at what's around you. He's 20, 26, 27. Yeah, would we want fresh young talent? Of course we would, to sort of look at what we're going to get out of Tierney. But Tierney's not exactly like particularly young either. But there's good mileage out of these guys. I just think that there is still room. And Penrice is a guy that I would say, do you know what? Look at him as an option, but I would still want something above and beyond that. And I think that as good as Sloop looked when he first came in, Terry, it's not really doing it for me. It's not really. It just seems very, very lazy, and that's the thing. Looking, as I say, is the way we finished up that game with the substitutions, it's undoubtedly that the quality just isn't there. What is it for yourself come the summer, Terry? What really needs to happen, and more to the point, what's actually going to happen?
In terms of left back, I don't see the point in giving Jeffrey Schlupp enough money to keep him and not giving Greg Taylor the same money that you would give to Jeffrey Schlupp, because Jeffrey Schlupp is 32, 33, and it's just kicking the can down the road for another year. So if you're going to go down the Schlupp route, I think you offer Taylor whatever you're going to offer Schlupp, because we're led to believe that money isn't Taylor's driver, but I'm pretty certain that it probably is. And I also think that the fact that he's had a child would make him want to stay in Scotland more than maybe it did if he didn't have the child, because it's very hard to uproot your family and take a young child to a foreign country and start to build a life from there. So I would imagine Taylor's preference would be to stay at Celtic, but I would be very surprised if we would be willing to pay Jeffrey Schlupp more than Greg Taylor. What my preference would be in that position would be that we would bring in a young player with serious potential as backup to Kieran Tierney. He plays when Tierney's injured. He plays if we need to rest Tierney.
Was Alex Valle that option? Was he that option?
He may well be. I've already touched on it. I wouldn't be surprised if he turns out to be the best of the lot out of all those left backs that we've brought in over the 6 years. And I can't believe it's 6 years that Tierney's been away. But all that money that we've blown and all those left backs that we've brought in, and we had to bring Kieran Tierney back to replace himself. But Baye may in time turn out to be the best. But I think it was probably a case of we're going to bring Tierney back on serious coin. We're not going to spend 6 million on Alex Baye. But I still think there has to be a young left back somewhere that we could bring in with potential, who's prepared to come in and be understudy to Kieran Tierney. And understudy to Kieran Tierney probably means you're going to start 20 games a season, pushing 25, pushing 30, depending on the various muscles in his body. So in terms of this summer, my priorities are Miller. I think we've missed it, but I hope I'm wrong. I think we need a centre back. I think the 6 million on Trusty is gone. You get back anything you can. He ain't good enough.
Does Nawrocki have a chance in that equation?
Well, you've just took the words off my tongue. I don't think he's got a chance because I don't think BrendanRodgers fancies him. But I don't think the lad has done an awful lot wrong. I really don't. I think out of all, Carter Vickers aside, I think out of all of the rest of them, he looks like the best defender amongst the central defenders that we've brought in. But seemingly that's not going to be enough. You need to have pace. His distribution has also been questioned. I think he looks okay. We haven't an awful lot to go on. He hasn't had much opportunity. And to be fair to him, he's only come in fleetingly and he's done okay. But can you imagine if he got a run of a dozen games and a bit of a chance to build a partnership with Carter Vickers? He hasn't had that opportunity.
Yeah.
But he looks okay. Defensively, he looks quite sound. But the problem is with a Celtic central defender, you need to be able to bring the ball out like Van Dijk, or one which might be achievable that I would like is Chris Iyer. I think he's the poor man's version of Van Dijk. He's nowhere near the same quality.
And is he can play out of favour? I mean, what is the situation? What is the situation? Is he can play out of favour?
He's been down at Brentford. He's been in and out of the team. He's been injured a lot. I don't think there's any strong link. I think it's just probably lazy rumours that have identified somebody that's gone down south, hasn't set the hell on fire, and he's been at Celtic. And we've got a habit at the minute of going back and trying to get ex-players back as cheap as we possibly can. I think that's possibly the only link. But in terms of the way he brought the ball out from the back, I think that's what all the rest of the players lack, is that ability. He could pick up the ball in our own 18-yard box and he could carry it to the edge of the other 18-yard box, a bit like Van Dijk, but obviously on a much lower level. So out of all the players that are sort of within reason, I wouldn't mind him coming back. Carter Vickers isn't even that good at bringing the ball out. Do you know what I mean? He gets towards that halfway line and then he kind of gets a nosebleed and he retreats. And the thing about that goal that I really liked, the one that he struck into the top corner, was just even on that wee bit. And I think, I think he needs to push his boundaries a wee bit. He is a very, very good player, but he kind of plays within himself a little bit. And we probably need those two. We need those two centre backs. Sorry, Steve, to cut across you. We need those two centre backs to be able to build the play like midfielders. That's what we need. We need them to be able to. For Europe, we need them to be able to defend their penalty box as if their life depends on it. But for the SPL, we need them to have the ability of midfielders to build a play. And that's the difficulty when you're going out there looking for centre backs. I'll just finish the question that you asked me. Other areas, we're heavily linked with this guy Svistgaard. See if we sign him, he better be fucking good. He better be good if we sign him. He's just been called up to the Denmark squad. So what I was thinking was, we've been linked with this guy. The price has gone from 4 million, 5 million, 6 million to 11, 12, 14, 13, 15, whatever it is. This guy's nowhere near a Denmark squad that has got your man from Man United in that's absolutely dog meat. So he's Swiss Garden. He's just been called up. If we sign him, he better be good. Wingers, I think this summer is going to be more of a rebuild than we would like, because the manager
feels that way.
Manager's he's very clever with the words that he uses in the press conferences, and he was asked about transfer activity this summer, and he predicted how many he would need, but he made a really serious caveat: if no one leaves. I think players leave. I think it's inevitable. My own personal thoughts, and I hope I'm wrong, I think Maida's gone. I think Dyson's gone. I think Hitati will go if he's fit enough to pass a medical somewhere else. And I think Kuhn is probably 50-50. Now, I hope I'm wrong on that, because I don't want Dyson going anywhere. I don't want Hitati going anywhere. Kuhn, I'm kind of take it or leave it. As much as he's been absolutely brilliant when he's been brilliant, it's just a cut of his jib. I just don't like it. take it or leave it when it comes to him. Now, I hope I'm wrong, but I think our interest in wingers over the last 12 to 18 months, and the manager's comments again, he's throwing it in there. There's a shelf life on players. It's around about 3.5, 4 years. That ties in Hatate. That ties in Maida. Maida's own comments around, I have to think about things and I have to think about other things outside of football. I think Dyson's gone, and I think the club, going back to that board, I think they'll be pushing to sell him this summer, because they will know that this summer is peak time for Dyson Maida. If we even look at the last month, and I'm picking just moments in games, the 1-on-1 against Rangers, the 1-on-1 against Aberdeen, 2 months, 3 months ago, he bangs both of those. We beat Rangers, we win a treble. Is that season that we got from Dyson, is that the anomaly, or is that the norm for the next 2 or 3 years? I wouldn't be prepared to bet that he'll replicate this season at any stage going forward. So I think
that's fair. I think that's fair.
The board will be looking at this. We've had 3 years of Dyson. He's been entertaining all 3 years. He's fucking give absolutely every ounce he has for us in those 3 years. But only in 1 year has he looked like a quality footballer. And that's the one that's just gone. And some idiot's going to give us 2025 for him. I think he's gone. I hope he's not. I think he's gone. So to allow Liam to speak, or you to speak, there's two names. There's two names that keep fucking springing up here. Balikwisha, I've kept an eye on him. He seems to score and assist a lot. This is the guy from Antwerp. His name won't go away. And I know even I look good on YouTube. I'm sure the Punk Duck looks good on YouTube as well. And Steve, you look good whether you're on YouTube or not. But the one I like is Orje, the Norwegian guy. He just looks like McGeady Mark II. And those two names keep coming up. So if you're going to pin me down, I've a horrible feeling Dyson will go. If Hatate can pass a medical, I think he'll go. And Kuhn may or may not go. And I think we'll bring in at least two of Svistgarden, Orje and Balikwisha.
I mean, I'd certainly take that. I'll pass over to yourself, Liam, just before I do. We're talking about signings, and I just want to bring this up because Rab's asked it a few times. Is Prentice better than Taylor? Well, I suppose where I would come at that one from us is I think in terms of level, they're probably quite similar. I think it again comes down to money and finances. Now, this is the devil you know or the devil you don't. I just feel that one of the problems with the Celtic side is complacency, familiarity, and as I say, is just doing the same thing and looking for the same players to turn up and do it. As much as I say that they're about the same, Prentice and thing, one, he would probably be quite cheap, and that's right up Celtic's alley. Two, you're getting that sort of homegrown quota. And as I say, I think domestically, he would do a job for you. I would still want, obviously, Kieran Tierney and one proper, decent, quality, long-term plan, decent, established left-back and top. But I just feel that it's time to change. Some people have gotten a bit stale past their sell-by date, and I would rather roll the dice on a guy that I think is every bit as good as Taylor than keep Taylor about and home for the same thing. But Liam, to wrap this one up,
I think Steve was before you go to Liam. The manager's comments also tell us that Taylor isn't fully invested in staying with Celtic. He may well stay. He may well stay, and if he does, happy days. But the manager has been at pains to say it's not just about me. It's not just about the club. Greg has to do what's right for Greg. And
you don't want to coax folk to stay. That's the thing.
But there's absolutely no evidence to suggest that the lad Penrice would want to come to Celtic either. Do you know what I mean? We're only just doing it.
Yeah, I mean, Liam, in terms of wrapping up this idea signings, obviously, Terry's said something quite harrowing there with the idea who we might sell in his opinion. You know what? As I say, what really needs to happen here, and as I say, more to the point, based on track record, do you trust A, this board, and B, as much as it sounds horrible to say, the manager's proper eye for a player? Because that, for me, I think this summer is absolutely huge. No matter what you think of across the water or across the city with Rangers, right? in my opinion, they will not get any worse. They will get better. You know, the laws of averages, they should get better. They will get a level of investment. And again, I think in terms of, is the gap as big as we think? On paper, yes, we are stronger in all sort of facets of being a football club. On the pitch, from what we've seen this season, it's pretty clear that, yes, we have better players, but making them turn up's the problem. So just on single head-to-heads, the gap on that alone isn't as big as it was. The big question is, can they pick it up? And as I said earlier on, a treble would have maybe covered a couple of cracks because, yes, we scraped the cup final. You've got to win it, I get it. We'd done well first half of the season and it was up, down, up, down, up, down. But it was aided and abetted with the fact that Rangers were absolutely fucking horseshit and everything else is about with no competition. You can't hide for that fact. Yes, we've done enough, but that's the thing. We've done just enough. That points tally in years gone by, and it doesn't matter if you win it by 20 points or 1 point, you still win it. I totally get that, and I'm not taking that for granted. All I'm saying is we need to get this summer absolutely 100% spot on and dialed in. There can be no room for error here if we want to try and stick on.
You just following the patterns and all that. You got to say no. You got to say no. I don't know. We need to have a window that happened when we got in those first two windows where players coming in quickly. And the other thing as well, we need to bed them in fast. So I think you'll see as soon as the window opens, we'll know within the first week or two whether we are actually fully in motion and engaged and this is already in play. Or, sometimes as we all suspect, it's like, they get to that thing where the window opens and it's like, right, where's that drawer with all the player evaluations and the scouting and, and they start on that day. I'd like to see us open this window and show some intent. And intent will show everything what we're going to be like this year. If we sign a couple of marquee players that aren't development players that we know that can come in and, just establish themselves as a first-timer in the team. That's what we need. And to do that, we've got to take risk. And to take risk, you've got to embrace change. And we'll see right there, Nat, we have to change the way we work. We can't wait until we're a week before our first Champions League playoff game to see if we can bed in a player. Because by that time, you're getting players without a pre-season, all the things that, you use as excuses for some of the players that have underperformed. Let's see, it's all going to be intent, and I think that intent will happen within the first week. We should have that first week, we should be seeing Tierney, because I don't think we've ever officially announced it.
Aye, strange.
One else. Maybe, Robertson, they keep saying Robertson. That's been a rumour as well, that he wants to come back. Maybe see Robertson on the left and Tierney and...
That'd be wild. Yeah. I mean, can I throw something out there at you? Right. We've spoke about wanting to sign players, marquee players, making a splash and really putting in a purpose. Yes, Celtic's business model has always been, as it is with Engels, speculating, trying to get good, exciting young talent. At times it's been at low end, you unearth a couple of gems, but any time, and Lennon Miller would fall into that, for example, where you sign these guys that have got great promise, you maybe develop them, punt them on for a big fee. But as I say, I've always been a massive advocate of saying that there is room for what I call running bills, right? That was, as we said, I'm not wanting to keep them around, but that would have been your Sloop, or that would have been your Joe Hart, it would have been your Schmeichel, guys that have vast experience, that you ain't getting no money back on them. They're there for a purpose. They contribute through their knowledge, their experience, and being a steady hand that you can depend on. Should Celtic go out and spend money on an established player? Now, I'm going to throw a name here, just that was somebody that was floated about, like Ndidi, right? A guy who's pretty much, he's coasting about, I believe he's still in Turkey, right? But prime, you know what you're getting, proven entity. He's going to cost you maybe the £6 or the £7 million that it's going to be. He's going to take a decent wage. He's going to have a heavy wage on that. But would you rather go out and get someone like him, or again a striker? Now again, I'm not saying that's the case. I'm not saying solution, but let's just say established. Let's say it was Edward for talking sake, just for talking sake, or like you says, Ayer for talking sake. I'm not wanting to bring all the band back together, but my point is these are names that are established and you kind of know what you're getting, right? Would you rather go
on holiday in Turkey?
Apparently so. I think I've not played too much there, but
he's been playing with. He's still with Leicester, is he not?
No, he was over. He was over in Turkey for a bit.
Did he? Was he?
Aye.
I thought he was still with Leicester.
Aye.
Check that out. Get a VAR on that.
But I think I'm pretty sure he went over to there because that's
why VAR on that, Steve. VAR and
I'll check out. But my point is, it still stands. There's a guy. The team's getting relegated. Right.
I'll throw one back at you.
All the boxes. Yep.
I'll throw one back at you. I've been watching this player just for about the last 2 months. Just not for no other reason other than had bets on the match. I ended up watching it. And you're doing your VAR check there. I hope
I am.
I hope Alan Muir isn't on it, or I look stupid. Do you remember the name Vinicius Souza?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. He was the number 6, the hard man midfielder identified under Ange season 1 for the summer. He's at Sheffield United. I think he went to Espanyol, or he went somewhere in Spain, and we were linked with him. He's Brazilian. And I've watched him play over the last 2 months, and I think he's exactly what we're missing. Contributes absolutely zero on a forward sort of trajectory, but my goodness, he just stands there in the middle of the park.
Terry, I'm going to give you your dues. I'll tell you why.
Steve, I want you to do the VAR. Do the VAR. Come on.
Right, there we go. Point. Leicester, but I'll tell you why, because see, when we were getting linked with them, it was supposed to be competition for going over to Turkey. That's why it's
you need to do your research if you're going to come on.
Mate, my research is fucking impeccable.
Right?
Everybody gets one.
You need to be factually correct here. No, see, the Ndidi one, that's gone. He's too old now. He ain't quick enough for what we need. That Vinicius Souza, I've watched him. He's exactly what we need. And here's an angle I really, just to take it off on another tangent, and I don't like talking about former managers and all, but Ange. So whenever he was with us, it was all about this Puskas philosophy. Everybody attacks. There's no fucking defense or nothing. Then this guy was mentioned, Vinicius Souza. We didn't get him. He went somewhere in Spain. He didn't do there. Then he was moved on. But Ange's 3 midfielders the other night in that cup final were 3 number 6s. Now, I'll probably make a dig out myself. Bentancur, Bissouma, and who was the other one? Was it somebody called Sarr? I don't know. There were 3 number 6s anyway. I know James Maddison's injured, but he essentially played with 3 number 6s who get the ball, do the simple thing, and move it on to somebody that's better. And then I watched Ange's Spurs do what Ange said none of his teams will ever do.
I know.
Mate, if we're 1-0 up and there's a minute to go, we'll still be trying to make it 2-0. Nah, you were 1-0 up and you just defend it for your life the rest of the game just to save your skin. But anyway, that guy Vinicius Souza, I can see why he was someone that we would have been interested in bringing in. And we keep talking about this.
Terry, to jump in, what about this guy? Because me and Liam spoke about this the other video. Sidibe from Guingamp, League
French
2.
League.
Aye, 6'5", a destroyer of worlds type midfielder. Again, we asked the question. His last 12 months, his contract. It's a name that's propped up a couple of times again. The asking price is supposedly about £2 million. He's had League One experience with Toulouse. He's had a couple of seasons in League One. I believe 1, maybe 2 seasons there, but largely League 2. Not to be sniffed at. He's got a good senior career amount of appearances and maybe ticks the box. I know that it maybe doesn't bowl folk over coming for League 2 in France, or the fact that it's cheap at $2 million, but in terms of just even a punt.
But I think, Steve-O, we've took a few of these punts. Quan, I threw Quan in there when you were speaking. That's £1 million. That's £1 million you're never going to get fucking back.
The Quan artist.
You know what I mean? And I think for about the last decade, Celtic have been threatening to bring in this and I know I don't even want to say this Wanyama type. Wanyama was a lot better than just a destructor. Wanyama scored goals. Wanyama scored a goal against Barcelona, one of the best Barcelona teams of the modern generation. Wanyama was a very, very special player, and he done nothing at the next two clubs that would make me think his best times were at Celtic. But we keep talking about this Wanyama figure. And even throw in Scott Brown there. I've been one of Scott Brown's biggest critics in that the Scott Brown that we got from Hibs isn't the Scott Brown that I think we thought we were going to get. So when I watched Scott Brown playing against Celtic, and I did watch him against Celtic quite a few times because that was, I was there when he was playing for Hibs. That was my sort of generation thing. Scott Brown was a gallus attacking midfielder who did the unexpected, who didn't give defensive midfielders or defenders a minute's peace. And he was creative, and he was a forward-thinking player. And we brought Scott Brown in, and I, honest to goodness, I thought with this player, like, I don't know, Lim, you're old enough, Steve, you're maybe not. Like, I'm thinking like a real purposeful attacking player. Do you ever mind we were linked with Kincladze? That's the most exciting one we were ever linked with. That never ever happened for me. Along with Ginola, Kincladze was this Georgian, unbelievable. A bit like Moravcik. He was in his mid sort of 20s. We were linked with him. Nobody ever heard of him. It didn't happen. Then the next thing he goes to Man City and he becomes this fucking superstar. But see, when we signed Brown from Hibs, it's a wee bit like the Miller thing. I get passionate when I'm talking about Lennon Miller because I see a lot of Brown in him. And Brown was unbelievable. He was just this ball of energy, but he had so much ability as well. But then when we brought him in, the pre-season, I remember watching the games in the pre-season, he was doing all this skillful stuff, but then as soon as the serious stuff started, he then just became this number 6 that just tackled, won the ball, wound opposition up, kept it simple, and gave it to somebody else that could play. And he almost retreated into a shell, and I'm just kind of going, I want to see the guy that I watched playing for him. So
sorry, Terry, see Celtic's requirement to get this midfield right. I'm not saying that what we've got is terrible now, but it needs that wee extra drip in there. Lennon Miller might be that one. And I'll ask you, and then obviously I want to know what Liam's thinking about it. We'll talk about guys like McArdle, right? And how we've been impressed with the small sample size I've got, and the manager spoke well of him, right? See the Celtic's requirement to get this midfield right and nail it on and ultimately go out and spend money to do it. Where does that leave the potential development of what could be our own in-house gems like McArdle? Because, excuse the French here, it's fucked for him if Celtic go out and buy Lennon Miller and or Sidibe. It's game over. It's done.
I think if we get some players in their squad, I mean, look, Engels has not. He's been given every chance to succeed. So his threshold for not succeeding is a lot less than bringing in McArdle. We'll see him 1 or 2 games and we'll make an assessment. Whereas someone like Engels, you got the luxury of getting the game time and the starts and all that to see what we have. I think we need to be developing some of these Scottish players and see what it is, because like a Brown and like some of the Tierney and all that. There's some players that just play better for a team they support.
Yeah,
and that's a huge factor, playing at home. Whereas some players will be the opposite. They need to get away. I mean, environment's huge, and I think that's one thing Celtic has as an advantage over a lot of clubs, is we don't have fans that sit on their hands. We've got a very active, vocal fan base that get involved. And when you play within a Celtic park, you're in an environment, that's like willing the ball into the net. You can't say that way everywhere where you go and, you're seeing the fans don't really care. But no, you know when you're playing well at Celtic and you know when you're not. And I think players that we have like Lennon Miller and all that, I think they're the players that could tune into that frequency and we could get a better player from them. That's what Terry says. Terry, I'm with you. I was a huge...
You've never agreed with me before.
What's that?
You've never agreed with me before about anything.
There's a first time for everything. That's what we're doing here in Celtic Order. They're bringing opinions together. Look at that. You two agreeing.
Talk about Scott Brown here.
But I mean, what do you think about Liam saying there, Terry? Right? What do you think? You're singing the praises, guys, at Len Miller, and I get it. Some folk in the comments aren't having it, but as I threw at Liam, what does that do for guys like McArdle? Now, I know you've got to be good enough to get in the squad, right? But we are oversaturated with midfielders. We're talking about shifting out a couple of guys. We've got all the fat to trim. You know, we've got Quan fucking cutting about, fuck knows what he's doing, do you know what I mean? And et al, other garbage that we've got, right? We're absolutely overloaded. We're sitting here and asking the question, Bernardo, Engels, who's going to play? They need to step it up. Hatate, will he, won't he? If we go out and sign, as I say, this defensive midfielder, this six, this Sidibe, and somebody like Len Miller, what chance do these young guys have?
Or if we get in Ndidi from Turkey?
From Turkey. Well, he'll go over to Turkey and he'll get new hair and new teeth.
But hold on, Steve. That's the role of the elite manager that you're paying more than you've ever paid any other manager to be the manager of Glasgow Celtic. That's what his role is. He has got to understand what's coming through beneath him. The structure has to be there that he knows what's coming through. He has seen McArdle. He has seen Francis Turley. He has seen Jude Bonner. Apologies if I think I've got those names all right. But you see these guys fleetingly coming in for 15 minutes here and there, and then they disappear forever. He has to be all over that. I don't care if he's a manager that maybe isn't comfortable signing players, or maybe he prefers to be on the grass. Go on the grass and see what's coming through the youth. He has to be all over that. That's the role of the Celtic manager. And if he is this elite manager that we, me included, believe him to be, then he should be all over that crap. He should know what we've got against what Motherwell have got, against what St Mirren have got, against what Hibs have got, against what our loan players who are out at Hibs and our loan players are out somewhere else. He should know that what order all of those players come in, and he should be able to untangle all of that and come up with the best midfield for Celtic. Young McArdle's looked okay, but Francis Turley looked okay. And I'll wind you back to, this is going to really test me here, I'll wind you back to the young lad that came on at left back against Feyenoord last season.
Mitchell Frame. He comes on, looks decent, looks fine. You never see him again. The Celtic manager has to be over all of that. No matter what his responsibility is about incoming signings, he has to be all over what's coming up through the youth development. And if those players are good enough and they're not getting through, that's on him. If those players aren't good enough and he's giving them too much game time, that's also on him. Now, where do I stand on that? I'm undecided, because I don't feel there's been a young player come through who's gone on to better things. So let's look at the two kids that went to Bayern Munich. I'm pretty sure none of those two are about to break into the Bayern Munich first team. You've had the lads that have gone.
Did one not come back to Queen's Park or something?
Yeah, he's back. Of course he was.
Yeah.
But you've Rocco Vata's probably the contentious one. Yes, Rocco Vata. So he obviously thought he could do better than Celtic. BrendanRodgers didn't fancy him enough to bring him in and give him the game time. There's actually a totally irrelevant point, but I've now got an actual link with Rocco Vata, because through a family link, I now know someone who's a scout at Watford who is well versed with Rocco Vata, but that's totally by the by. He's getting game time in the Championship, regular game time. He probably will go on to be a decent footballer. Will he go on to be good enough for Celtic, or as good as he thought he would be? That's up for debate. But how many of these young lads that have come through with all this potential have gone on to do better than Celtic? At the minute, very, very few of them. So you've got to give the club their dues on this one. You know, that everybody wants players to come through from the youth system and go on to be the next Kieran Tierney or James Forrest or Callum McGregor. but you've got to trust the judgment of the people out there. And it's not just the manager. It's not just the manager of the first team. It's the manager of the B team. It's the manager of the 18s. It's everyone who's involved in the background. All of those guys will have an input in these players that are coming through. And by and large, there haven't been too many have gone on to greater things.
Yeah. Well, guys, we've went, I can't believe it, almost an hour and 45. Unbelievable. We could sit here and talk, and I'd love to keep talking. Thanks to everybody who's been joining in. I'm going to fire it back to you nice and quick, right? The season's done. It's a double. Could have been history. It wasn't. It's disappointing. Want you just in a very short format, tell me, grade this season. You can chop it up and give it just a straight A, B, C, whatever, or you can split it down, first half, second half, European. What is your general takeaway for this season? Now that the smoke's settled, you've looked at things, you've had a wee bit of time to digest everything that's went on. Undoubtedly, it's a success based on 2 trophies. We're now seeded for the Champions League because Reicher sorted us out. So hopefully we push on there. We've spoke about it for nearly 2 hours. There's a lot of work to be done. We need to get it right. But for this season, Liam, where are you at?
I went into this season thinking we were going to have just a brilliant season. You know, the way we started and all that. And yeah, my expectations diminished when I seen that we were starting with Greg Taylor at left back against Dusseldorf, or was it whoever we played when we got beat 7-1, that we weren't willing to change, that we were still doing the exact same things. We were going into games with, I think, the unsettled centre backs. We had Carter Vickers out at the beginning of the year. Yeah, I give it a B. I thought the entertainment of the football really dropped this year. I thought that was, I thought the, you know, just everything around the club just seemed very slow. And, you know, we're like this juggernaut that's hard to turn and hard to move and to take shape. And I think we need to be a bit more mobile and a bit more direct. And I think this year will improve if we get a director of football. And before we go, I'm just going to throw one other name out there that I think would make a brilliant director of football for Celtic, Jackie McNamara.
Wow. And Jackie's in there. He's got his agent background and he knows it. What about yourself, Terry?
Liam, I would like to endorse that because McNamara's track record of identifying young players is superb. The European progress, Steve-O, I think has been good. I think the moment, if you ask me for my standout moment of the whole season, it was away to Bayern Munich in their stadium, dancing toe-to-toe with them. And I thought we'd done it. And that's why everything else seems like an anticlimax and a bit of a climb down from that, because we were able to go into that environment. And let's not make any bones about it. That's a team that could have won this competition. Mm-hmm. That Bayern Munich team could have won this competition that Paris or Inter Milan are going to play for next weekend. Bayern Munich, we couldn't have won it, but Bayern Munich could very, very easily have won that competition. And we gave them fucking everything in that away game. Yeah, that made the home game more disappointing. But I took so much pride out of that effort in the away game. The only thing that stopped us was a freak moment, albeit one that you could probably have predicted because it's just one of those moments where it's glorious failure.
One of those Celtic moments.
Yeah, one of those moments. But if you ask me for my whole moment of the season, I would pick that one where we went in there and we danced with them, because that's taking it outside of the domestic game. That's taking it away from the Glasgow rivalry. That's taking it away from the domestic game. And that's measuring yourself against real proper football teams. And in that moment, on that night, we done that and we showed them that we could compete. And that's what makes last Saturday, that's what makes the Glasgow derbies since the start of the year. That's what makes these moments of anticlimax so disappointing, because we know what this group of players and this manager and this football club are capable of. Now, if you're asking me for the whole season rating, I'm going C+, B-, because I think there's just so much untapped potential. If we could create that away game in Bayern Munich, if we could do that every single week, and there's no reason, if you can do that once against a team of that class, if you can get the mentality and the attitude, and these are words that I'm quoting the manager on because they come out in every single press conference, attitude, mentality. If we can go into that playground of Bayern Munich away and we can dance toe-to-toe with them, then why are we watching the pish that we watched against Aberdeen and we watched against Ross County and St Johnson and Dundee and Rangers and all those other dickhead teams that you want us to talk about?
No, I agree. You took the words out my mouth. I was going to say B-. Maybe that seems like a harsh critic, so I'm glad you
B- and C+ are the same thing.
I'm glad you went. Glad you went for it there first, Terry. The reason being, I said it before, I'll say it again. I think it was very much a season of two halves. The first half, we carried on. I kind of look at the first half of the season as being an extension for the tail end of last. From January right through to just about the start of December, Celtic looked unstoppable. Right through the pre-season, we were doing everything right, and that was it. As I says, we were doing our job tidily in the league, laying teams to the sword, putting on the fire, putting on a show, great football, right? But because, as I say, aided and abetted by the shit that was around us, things started to really drop off. Now, if you remember as well, Aberdeen were at a point up till maybe sort of October, November, still giving us a game, right? So there was a tightness, and it kept us sharp, it kept us agile, and it made us play better. Once that fell away, once the arse fell out them, that's when I think the complacency kept in. The bright sparks was the development in Europe, undoubtedly. Some people turn their nose up at it, but we wanted something tangible, and we'd done it, and it was promising. After the cup final against Rangers, that's when it started to slip for me a little bit. Can't really put my finger on it. The manager says it was maybe complacency. I genuinely believe that. With a couple of wee bright sparks where you thought Celtic are back, we handed out a couple of beatings, a couple of good performances, but it was sluggish, it was lacklustre, it became samey, teams started to work us out. That's why I'm saying a B-. Had Celtic got the treble, I would have said it was a B, but papering over a multitude of cracks, which we have covered in great detail this evening. Undoubtedly, there's massive work to be done, I think, but it's up to the board, it's up to the manager, and it's up to those players to, if they want to stay about, to pick it back up, to go again, and to reinvent themselves. I think Celtic need to keep evolving, they need to stay agile, they need to stay on top, they need to freshen things up, whether that's behind the scenes, whether that's with the squad, whether that's with the tactics, because the same Celtic can't come back next season with one or two players dropped in and play the same system. It's as simple as that. So, guys, thank you very much for joining us. Every single person in the chat, thank you very much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Bit of a marathon, but hey, an end of season takeaway is never going to be a short one. So, thanks again. If you've not done it, subscribe, like, share, all that stuff. As I say, you can donate if you want to help out the channel. We'll be back this summer trying to cook up some content, trying to think of new things to keep it interesting. We'll be back for all the usual stuff. The transfers, we'll do a wee proper report card. We'll break down Europe, this, that, and the next thing. Keep yourself notified. Hit the bell icon and we'll do it. So anyway, until next time, take care of yourselves and hail, hail. See you later.
You know.